All right, we are here again. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Tuesday night, Not Your Ordinary Podcast. Tonight we are talking about Jesus and all other gods. Tonight's actually going to be a little bit different than previous podcasts. We're going to do this sort of in a hypothetical competition style. I titled this Jesus and All Other Gods because there's so to kind of explain my thinking on this. Really, there's a I've had the opportunity to work in a couple of different industries that are working on batteries, and the current winner of like most efficient batteries is lithium ion. And basically what they do with batteries, there's several like runner-ups, and I'm not going to go into all that, but they have this grading criteria for all batteries, and basically it's like several different categories. It's like voltage, density, resistance, lifespan, cost, etc., etc. So I think it's like 8 or 9 different categories that they basically grade batteries in to find out which battery is the best among all batteries, right? Best battery technology. And all the batteries that are in like the top 6, I think, have a lot of strengths in certain areas, but then also like either costly or really inefficient weaknesses in other areas. But lithium ion is the most balanced. So it has like the best of all, right? It doesn't necessarily win in every category, but it is the best balanced. And I was thinking about this in terms of God. Now, like I said, this is going to be somewhat of a hypothetical competition. Now, the Bible says, God is speaking in Isaiah, and he says, I am the Lord, and there is no other. There is no God but me. And so this is God's claim, right? This is this is a declaration. There is no other God. There's no such thing as another God. Then you have other statements like he is the God of gods, right? And then Jesus, the Lord of lords, the King of kings. And so you have him ranked highest among all other ideas of God or leadership or power or authority. And then you have another statement that Jesus makes, and this is kind of what drove some of this thinking for the podcast tonight. In Matthew 5:48 says, but you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. That word perfect, it's fun. It's interesting that they use the word perfect because that word perfect means flawless. Now, it's not possible for man to be flawless.
Well,
hold on.
True. Liar.
Really?
Go on. Yeah, no, It doesn't mean flawless. It means complete.
Okay, I know what it means. I'm getting there. Hold on. So obviously that's not what they're trying to say in the scripture, because the word doesn't mean flawless.
Right.
But when you think of perfect, you think.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not what it means
I
in
know.
the Bible.
That's what happens when you cut off the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, no. You said what it means is.
Hold on. No. I'm talking about thinking here. Hold on. The word actually means consummated goal or mature. So the idea is that it's literally something that has gone through necessary stages to reach an end goal and developed into a complete thing.
Yeah.
Right? So God fits the bill on every single level.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. He's saying that in every single category, God is complete. That there's nothing missing from God. There's no negatives, there's no flaws, there's no weaknesses. And the Bible makes statements like that all throughout the scripture. So I'm not going to talk about the issue of man being perfect tonight, but my hope is to talk about the idea of God being perfect. If every other God was real, let's just think hypothetically, right? Every God was real. We're living in Disneyland right now, and God is real. Muhammad's God, Allah is real, and the gods of Hinduism are real, and so all these gods they're all real, and you were to compare them all. How would you what would be the negatives and the positives? What would be the comparisons? What does ultimately the big question tonight is, what does God have, and who is God compared to every other God? And so I have a couple questions for the listener. First, if you're not a Christian, but you believe in a God, what does your God have that the God of the Bible doesn't? So like I said, kind of a hypothetical competition
Wait,
here.
if you're what?
So if what does your God have?
No, rewind, because I thought you said if you're a Christian.
No, if you're not a Christian.
Okay.
If you're not a Christian, but you believe in a God.
Right, okay.
What does your God have, or whatever the thing is that you worship? Maybe you don't worship a God, but you worship something. What does it have, or he have, or she have, or it have that God doesn't, the God of the Bible does not?
Right.
And then if you are a Christian, and I'll post this in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't post that. Let's see. This is a fill in the blank question. The God of the Bible is the only one who fill in the blank. And you're you can throw it out there. The God of the Bible is the only one who ... question mark, fill in the blank. So let's get this posted in, and in I don't know, 30, 40 seconds, Instagram folks will see it.
No, it's actually doing pretty good.
Is it? Okay.
It's pretty close.
All right, let's go. All right. So if you're not a Christian, what does your God have that the God of the Bible doesn't? And if you are a Christian, the God of the Bible is the only one who fill in the blank. So, Pastor Ford, my question for you as we start getting those answers in, and by the way, throw your answers in. This is not, it's not a real competition, because the truth is there is no other God. But
well, that's where I think I'm going to throw a wrench into your whole idea.
You're going to talk about what a God is?
Well, no.
Man's thinking?
I'm going to zoom out like I always do.
Good. Well, hold on. Let me ask my question first.
In.
Okay. We're not too zoomed in. I do a lot of this on purpose.
Yeah, you'll see.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah. No, I know the idea, but the problem is it's what's referred to as a straw man argument. It's when you set up an argument that's easy to defeat.
Well, when you're comparing,
and so it's kind of a lose from the beginning. But yeah, are you ready for me to answer? Or?
I'm ready for me to ask the question I was going to ask you.
Go on.
Okay, so if all other gods are real, who, and you've done some study on different gods. Did you actually finish the Quran?
No, I'm still in the middle of it.
Okay, so if every other god was real, is there a God that you would say comes closest to being like the God of the Bible?
Yeah. Okay, so I have to answer that question this way: is if all other gods were real, then the God of the Bible wouldn't be. And so that's the real problem with the question, is because
hypothetical.
Well, you can't. You can't. Yeah, you can't.
Work with me here.
Well, I can't. And this is the reason why. Because if all other gods exist, then the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Because you're going, to put God in the midst of all the other gods will require redefining who he is. By definition, it will redefine who he is. It would be, if you're talking about created versus not created, and there's a light years of difference between those things. And so to say that there are multiple not created gods doesn't make any sense, because there can only be one God. There can't be multiple gods. And that's why, like the Hindu gods and Norse and all these other gods are not real by definition, because they just wouldn't be the case. Because you can only have one creator God, and that's where the problem lies, is because you have to have a frame of reference.
So let's talk
in order
about
to
this.
talk about a God at all.
Okay.
When you have this entity that is God, and then you have this opposing entity that's also God, now you're just talking fantasy. You're not talking reality anymore, because you can't have two ultimate gods who are different from each other. One must be the creator, and everything else must be created. There's no other way around it. That's why the atheist position is probably, if you have to take a position, other than if you want to deny the existence of God, you're better off to be an atheist than you are to be a polytheist, because there's no reality based in the idea of a a polytheist existence. There can't be. And that's what you see when you look at the legend. They're fighting with each other all the time. Well, like people do. And so it's quite clear that they're the figment of a imaginative individual.
So these are all gods are created by men.
Yes.
Yeah. So
no, the gods God's little g are created by men.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are the king of clarification. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about this from the standpoint of what man has confidence in. So I'm, hypothetically, I'm a man that believes in that Allah is God. And there's a statement made, which is one of the things that kind of came to my mind while I was studying for this, is a man, he's like apologetic. He said he was talking to a Muslim man, and he said, one of the things I don't like about your God is your God has provided no payment for sin. And so every one of you, when you stand before God, will have no payment for sin. And so this idea that they have a confidence in something that doesn't actually provide, even from a logical perspective or practical application, there's nothing there.
That's actually a flawed argument, to be honest.
What's the word we were talking about a while back?
Well, the reason why I say that is because if Allah is God and there is no other, then what he chooses to be. See, because this is why I said it the way that I said it. The idea, because if Allah is God, then we have to redefine everything. Sin isn't such a big problem anymore.
Yes.
Okay,
hold on.
It's
honestly,
we're now in a whole nother.
I feel like we're kind of spending too much time zoomed in. Zoom out for a second.
No, that is zoomed out.
no. Hold on. So
that is zoomed out. You're zoomed in.
Hold on. No.
That's the problem. Is you want to talk about.
Do you remember the scripture in the Bible?
I
can't remember the scripture. I'm just trying to get you to think for a second.
Well, no, you have to zoom out.
I know. There is no other God. I stated that in the very beginning.
Right. But here's the point. Listen, Jordan.
Hold on.
Here's the problem: is that if you're going to say Allah is God, you can't talk about Jehovah anymore. So you can't say that your God doesn't provide a way of sin for dealing with sin.
I feel like we should just.
Well, but this is the problem, though. So you have to understand.
It's not a problem.
No, it is a problem because you can't redefine God in the middle of the stream.
God.
Well, you can't say.
I'm not. I'm trying to get people to see the practical things that are holes in their God. For instance, making a God out of a piece of wood, and then from the remnants of that piece of wood, burning fire with it and warming yourself. Right?
Yes.
You're worshiping one part of it. The Bible is giving us a picture of the insanity of creating a false God.
But it's a flawed argument to talk about Allah and use Jehovah's criteria of the issues of sin. Mm-hmm. It's a flawed argument. And I would side with the Muslim no matter what he said. Because all he has to do is say, well, what Allah has done is this. We don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. Argument's over because Allah is God. And the problem with your God is your God doesn't have a payment for sin like my God does. Mm-hmm. Well, who cares? Who cares what your God thinks? Your God isn't real. You see what I'm saying? So this is where the problem lies, is the idea of trying to compare God to other belief systems just plain doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Because when you talk about when you talk to a Hindu, you're going to talk about a whole different approach to who God is, what that means, all of that. And then you go over to a Muslim and you're going to have the same thing, but completely different. It's going to be a whole different dynamic of what's required, what isn't required, the laws, the rules, regulations, stuff like that. And then you go to Jehovah and now you've got a whole other thing all over again. And so this is the problem with trying to cross gods. It would be like somebody saying, the problem I have with your God, Jehovah, is that your God, Jehovah, is too strict. My God lets me do whatever I want to do. Mm-hmm. So your God has a problem because your God won't let you do whatever you want to do. That's why I don't believe in your God. And that's a legitimate argument. If the other is a legitimate argument, I got you. You don't have a payment for sin because you worship Allah. Well, then, I got you because you have to have a payment for sin because you worship Jehovah. And I don't. So, I'm good, you're not, so you have to watch yourself. You have to be careful. And that's why I decided to become a Muslim. And so
if somebody believes in Allah,
there's
no argument.
No.
You believe in Allah. So good luck with life. Hopefully you're right.
No, the
You're
issue,
wrong, but
yeah.
hopefully you're right.
No, the issue.
I'm trying to
yeah,
get,
that's
so
not
if
the,
you're talking to somebody,
but you got to
hold on,
understand.
hold on,
Yeah.
hold on. What I'm trying to do is if you were in a conversation with a man who is a Muslim, you would
Yes.
be in the same argument. My
I
God's
wouldn't.
real,
I
your
would
God's not.
not
What would
mention
you?
one thing about Allah. Not a single
Okay.
thing.
I've seen you do that in a
No,
conversation.
no.
I've literally
I don't
seen
talk
you in a
about Allah.
conversation.
No, I don't.
Yes,
I
yeah.
don't.
The
No, I don't.
comparisons of religion.
No, I don't. I don't
So you're
compare
telling me.
religion.
So okay, if
I compare.
again,
I
go back
compare
to
the teachings of the Quran
which are
versus
from
which are
and about who?
from. They are about God. Okay, they are about. They come from, quote unquote, supposedly from the same Old Testament.
And where does it
Okay,
differ?
the issue of the differing is that the Prophet Muhammad reinterprets all of that, and so that's all I ever deal with. Is I deal with the issues of, okay, Muhammad says he is a believer in the God of the Old Testament. Okay, and he says that the problem is that the Old Testament, the writings have been corrupted, and I have the truth of how the Old Testament should have been, and my conversations always revolve around the individual themselves, the person themselves, and do they agree with Muhammad? Do they, when I bring up like the idea that Muhammad seems to be, he's speaking in the first person when he writes, and he talks it's as if God is speaking when he writes, and almost every other verse in the Quran talks about hell, and Allah. These people are going to go to hell. So and so does this, and they do it like that, and they do it the other thing. Don't worry about them because they're going to hell. They're not. I don't have anything to do with them. And then the next one, then they're going to hell, and the next one, they're going to hell, and they're going to.
Okay,
There's
so
way more in Islam about that.
Let's take that angle then.
Okay.
So compare the two. If you are talking to a Muslim, what are the issues with Islam? Where are you just talked about it? You just talked about it. So you just talked about it. You talked about how there are misinterpretations on Muhammad's part, and what
misinterpretations of the Old Testament,
right,
not of the Quran.
So where are those holes? Identify those holes.
The issue is not about holes. The issue is about the fact that the Bible was completed before the time of so we're talking like 600 AD, I think, where Muhammad comes on the scene. That's the beginning of Islam, is 600 AD, which is 600 years after the time of Christ. And so you already have a history of Islam, a history of Christianity that is 600 years old. So this is, you can't just talk about, it's a little bit naive to think that 600 years of people being alive, that everybody is deceived. Nobody knows the truth. Nobody but Muhammad. It's a very naive way of thinking that the whole world has just corrupted the belief in God. And the truth is that is literally what every religion does, is every religion claims that they are the truth. But whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or whoever it may be, they all claim that they're the truth, and there was no truth before them. And that's always the mistake that they make, because what about the first 4,000 years of mankind before any of these religions came on the scene, let alone the next, anywhere from 600 to 2,000 years or 1,800 years of other belief systems that have come up? You can't just say we've got the truth. Well, what does that mean for all these other people? It means that all these other people are what? And it depends on the religion.
Clarify what you mean by all these other people.
All these other people from Adam up to
Okay. So in
Muhammad.
The lineage of Christianity.
You've got everybody from Adam to Muhammad. Nobody knows the truth. Nobody does. There isn't anybody, because Muhammad had to show us the truth, and so there's nobody. But this is where the kind of belief of Islam breaks down a little bit, is because they see Muhammad as a prophet, and also Jesus as a prophet, and also the prophets of the Old Testament as prophets. And now you have what's called a dichotomy. Is you have, on the one hand, which was the inspiration for writing the Quran, was to set the record straight. And there's a lot of, this didn't happen this way like it says in the Old Testament. It happened this way. And so he's doing a lot of that. But yet then at the same time, it's referring back to things in the Old Testament and using that as evidence for something that's being spoken further on. So you have this dichotomy of, well, we can use the Old Testament, but we can't use the Old Testament. And it's like, well, you can't be in the middle. You have to decide, either we can use the Old Testament or we can't, because you get into this situation, which again is what happens with many of the other religions that have come after, is the idea of, well, these parts of the Bible are right, but these other parts are wrong. And the reason why we know that these parts are right and these parts are wrong is because, the majority of the time is because it comes from one, leader. One leader that's had the revelation and God has told him the ultimate truth. And so, but now if you forget about all of that, so forget about all those religions and all those beliefs, and the other religions, other belief systems, Hindus and stuff like that, they don't really borrow from the Old Testament. And so that's not such a big factor there as it is with Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, is that they all have their root in the Old Testament. But my point in all this is that when it comes to Christianity really is just the history of the world. It's God. It starts in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. It created Adam and Eve, and then everything moved forward from there. And so it's the ultimate story because it is the frame of reference for everything that comes afterwards. And so you don't have a religion, for example, a religion that says, there's a different beginning and things went in a different way, and that story that's from the Old Testament isn't true, and let's all go in this direction instead. They all borrow, whether it's the morality or the stories directly. They all borrow from Christianity, and so when I say Christianity, I'm talking about Adam was a Christian. That's what I mean. Is just from that standpoint. I'm not talking about Christianity as the time of Christ coming. Christianity has been since the beginning. The plan of Jesus coming to the earth was always God's plan. Mm-hmm. That was never I think I need to do something. It was never like that. It's no. This has always been the plan right from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And so, and the Bible even says that. It says before the foundations of the world, these different things have happened. And so my point in all that is when you're making this comparison of gods versus gods, is that if these gods are real, then the God who started everything can't be real. Mm. That story can't be real. The beginning can't be real. There can't be an Adam and Eve. There can't be a history that came along of great things that have happened, of world floods and judgments and the overthrowing of armies, and none of that can be real because it would be in a competing environment that this God is another God. He's not the God. He is another God who's kind of, come into play. And that's the other thing too, is that there is no, 4000 BC God story, other than the Bible. Right. That's it. It's that. I mean, it's just that's it. And so often I hear people say, which is it's erroneous to say it, is there were religions before Christianity, there were religious practices before Jesus, but there wasn't religions before Christianity. Religious practices are all spin-offs. They're all rebellion against the God of Israel.
And so when you use the word Christianity, you are literally talking about from Genesis to now.
Yes.
Right? Or up to.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's about the same God.
Yeah.
The God Jesus came to tell us about in the first century is the God who existed from 4,000 years earlier from the book of Genesis that was given to us by Moses. And so there is no difference. And I'm not saying that's when God started. I'm just simply saying that's the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
It's the same
Right.
story. Jesus is actually I was going to say end, but he's technically more the middle part of the story, because the story afterward is the church age, which is where we live now.
So what about like, so if like, the story of God's going forward and you have these kind of spin-offs.
Yes.
Can you name some of these spin-offs and like their, characteristic differences, like the things they spun off in this area?
Yeah.
This is like not in line with the God of the Bible. This is who the God
Right.
of the Bible is, and how what they're doing now differs from God's intention or God's character
Right.
and
Well,
personality.
all of it. So the interesting thing is when you read the Old Testament, and if you're paying attention as you're reading the Old Testament, you will find that these are actually literal spin-offs. Because it started Adam and Eve, Jehovah God. Okay, Cain and Abel, Jehovah God. The lineage of Cain and Seth, the third child of well, I don't know about the third child, but definitely a child of Adam and Eve. And so you have actually, I probably would be best to say it probably isn't. There definitely had to be women in between there. But anyway, so the point that I'm making in this is the idea of, so you have these generations of people, and these generations of people are sort of descendants of Cain. They're godless people that have descended out of Cain. And then you have the God people that descended out of Seth, and then you'll have others as well that are other children that came from Adam and Eve that we don't read about in the Bible. They're definitely there, but we don't read about them or their lineages, because the Bible really is kind of focusing on the lineage of Jesus. That's really where we're following, because that's the whole story. The Bible isn't a history of the universe.
Yeah.
It's a story. It's God's story about the beginning and where things are going, and it stays focused on his branch, as it were, of history. There's all kinds of history that goes off like this in a million different directions. But in those different directions, this is why you have these other gods, is because these other gods, like the children of Israel, so the children of Israel, they're in the wilderness. God is bringing them out of Egypt, and they're following Moses. Jehovah God is leading them. They're walking through. Moses has gone up on the mountain to speak with Jehovah God, but down where the people are, they are fashioning a calf, and they're calling it God, and they're saying, "This is the God that brought us out of Egypt. This one here, not Jehovah who's up on the mountain of Moses." And that, what we're looking at is how all other religions have come into play, is we are not going to follow the God of Moses. We're not going to follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're not going to follow the God of Adam and Eve. We are going to make our own God. And so that's what you have is in all of this, is the making of another God. If you look very closely at the God of Islam, the gods of Hinduism, the God of Judaism, it's a different God. It's not the God of the Old Testament. It's not the God of the history, because it's all, like I said, you read Islam retells all the stories. The Quran retells all the stories differently, which is interesting to me, because if you have the true religion, then why do you have to borrow from the fake one? Why do you have to have any of the story? Why can't you just come and say, listen, God has given me a revelation personally of himself. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It has nothing to do with prophets. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's all just madness, and God has given me the truth, and let's go from there. Why don't we ever see that? It's always a borrowing. There's always a borrowing from the God of Israel, Jehovah God. It's always borrowing from Jehovah God. I've heard of people that use it as they actually use it as a a defense against Christianity by saying, well, there are lots of stories about gods who became sons and were born, but if you look at the timeline of these things, these are things that came after. They weren't before the Bible. They were after. And that's what you have to understand is, the Bible tells us way back in the book of Isaiah, which is thousands of years before Jesus, that there'll be a son born of a virgin, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called the mighty God. And we see that fulfilled in Matthew. The Bible talks about calling Jesus Emmanuel, or God with us. And so you have these prophecies that have been fulfilled. So it's really hard to say those prophecies were fake and Jesus didn't fulfill them. It's like, okay, so think about what you've just said. You say these are fake and you say Jesus didn't fulfill them. You shouldn't need to tell me that. That history, I should already know this. I should already know this from the general history of the world. There should already be, a lack of evidence. Not a lack of evidence, but a contradiction of evidence. There never was somebody named Jesus. It just never happened. There was never anybody named Jesus. Okay, well, that now we're going somewhere. If you can come up with that kind of a thing, you have a thing. There was never a Jesus. There was never a man in Israel that did miracles. None of that was ever. Well, what about Josephus? Josephus was a Jewish historian, and he wrote about Jesus. Well, yeah, but he's you can't trust him either. It's like now we're just looking at conspiracy theories. Right. It's not. We're no longer looking at the reality of where we are, and so that's why it's so hard to. Because when you started this, I was like, there's no way I can do this because, you're going to take attributes of God and compare them to attributes of these other gods, but it isn't about the attributes. And that's the thing that was rolling around in my mind is because whatever the true God is who God is, right. Not whatever we like about him, makes him the true God. And so so in the whole comparison game, well, my God, allows for this and your God doesn't. Well, you have to understand that your God doesn't exist. It's not, so what you're believing is a fictitious thing. It's not a realistic thing. It's not a practical experience thing. Mm-hmm. And that's where the problem with this falls.
Can you get like, is there a way to make, and we're going to get to these answers here in a second. I want your comments on these answers, but when it comes to like I said, the thing with the I was going to try and look up the scripture real quick, but the man with the log and creating a God out of a log and burning it. There's like, when you just look at it, when you zoom out and look at what's happening, it seems insane.
Well, it doesn't seem. It is.
That's what I mean. Yeah, the guy thinks this is perfectly logical.
Well, I don't know that.
Insanity,
yeah,
right?
No. I don't think that's. See, now that's an interesting thought. I don't think he thinks it's perfectly logical. I don't think so. And the truth of the matter is,
just doing it.
The truth of the matter is, and I very much believe this, is that this is the problem with humanity, is that when you reject the true God, you have to have a replacement. You have to. You can't, because your physical makeup requires a God. Mm. Your physical makeup does. This is why atheists don't do well in life. Usually all they do is complain. I've never heard of an atheist who just is, positive and happy and just enjoying life and doesn't really worry about Christians or Muslims or any of these. No, he's always got to take shots. He's always got to fight against Christianity. Because you always have to have a replacement. Mm. You can't just simply just going to live my life and just, I don't believe in God. I think this is all hocus pocus. I mean, you're not. It would be different if there wasn't like millions of people who believed in this. Yeah. And so, millions of people believe in a lot of things. Well, I think that's a kind of a weird supposition, to believe that there are actually a million people that believe the exact same way about a certain thing. I think that's probably more rare than anybody would actually believe. But you have lots of people that literally live in different cultures in different parts of the world who have the exact same philosophy, or theology is probably a better way of putting it, theology about God. identical, absolute identity. People who've never seen each other. Because we're not talking about, I'm talking about from the standpoint of, like you go into Asian countries where they don't even, for many years, thousands of years, Christianity wasn't even a part of their culture. Okay. And then you go in there and you begin to deal with them and speak to them and you start telling them about the God of the Bible, that how relatively speaking, how easy it is for them to say, this is what we believe and this is how I've been raised, but none of it makes any sense, because it is forced. It's like you're going to believe in this because you don't want to believe in this. It's not so much that you're making this free will choice to believe in something. It's that you're going to believe in this. This is why in these kinds of cultures, when you have people that convert to Christianity, sometimes the parents just disown the kids. It's like, I'm not going to have anything to do with you anymore. Well, if your God is so powerful, then why are you worried about that? Christians, real, genuine Christians, when their kids decide they're going to be atheists or something like that, they don't go, oh, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. Get out of my life. I never want to hear from you again. No, they begin to pray. They begin to pray for them that they'll come to the truth, because it's different. It's just, that's what I mean, is there's just no comparing of the religious theological ideas of God and God. It's not like there's a God that has this autonomy, and then there's Jehovah God. But there's other gods that have autonomy as well. No, there's only one God that has true autonomy, and that's Jehovah. No other God has autonomy, because we see it. In our religion we believe, in love, and you should love your neighbor as yourself. Gee, I wonder where you got that from. I mean, that's a great concept. Yeah. I think us Christians ought to probably. Oh, we did, didn't we? Oh, in fact, it's in the book of Deuteronomy. And it's like all these ideas, of how things are supposed to go and how life is supposed to be, and that you need to love one another and this and that and the other thing, and all these ideas, they're just rehashed Judeo-Christian philosophies. And I don't even like using that term, but for some people that have a hard time with the idea of Christianity starting from Genesis. But just the God Jehovah, let's say it that way. That's probably a better way of saying it, is the Jehovah God and who he is. You borrow from him, you take some things, you throw some other things away because you're trying to create your own God, but it's not the complete opposite. It's not like that's the driving force, is we do want a God like us. But we can't make him like us, because if we make him like us, then he's not God, is he? It's just us, and we're just playing games. And so we have to give him, other things, like, we have to sacrifice children to him, because there has to be a distinction between God, the God, and us, and so we're definitely not going to be asking for people's children, but he's God. He can do whatever he wants. So he can have, he can ask for children, and he can kill people, indiscretionally, and so you have a lot of these kinds of ideas all mixed in to various religions, where in Christianity, Jesus even talks about these things. He says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, love your enemies and do good to those who hurt you. And so he's setting this standard that is like totally the antithesis of what mankind would prefer to do. We like the idea of eye for an eye. That's us. That fits right in with us. And so, when God is eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, we're like, yeah, I'm glad he's the real God. But then Jesus comes along and goes, no, we're going somewhere. That was dealing with all of your sin and all your madness and all your chaos and everything else. But now I've come. Now everything's changed, because now you're going to be held accountable for everything that you do. And so now we have this whole different realm. But this is the thing about all this, is that other religions do not have any kind of plan. There's no plan in terms of where's all this leading, what is it all going to be, nobody's waiting, and I know, that the idea of the return of the imam, in Islam is a thing, and the Jewish Jews believe in the return of the Messiah. But again, these are borrowed from Jehovah God religion. It's not, they don't come from just making things up out of the blue. Oh, you have a God that's gonna come back and take his people away. Well, so do we. It's not, and so that's the thing, is it's all borrowing, and so that's what makes this so hard as far as trying to do this comparison thing, because
but you're doing it.
but it's not a comparison.
It totally is,
because I'm comparing everything to the real. So I'm only comparing the real to the imaginary. I'm not comparing what if they were real.
Okay.
Because it doesn't make any sense.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay.
That's why it doesn't.
Poor way of asking the question. Okay. So one last question, then we'll get to the answers. And I think the answers, by the way, we don't have any like anti-God answers here. So we'll work through these, and I think that they're good. Okay. So comparing these to the imaginary gods. And you can answer the question, does the imaginary God this or that or the other thing? And even in the way they're believed in.
Okay,
right?
well, we can go there.
Right.
But
so one last question is talking about men building, and this has also always fascinated me. Specifically, we talked about the, I can't remember where he was from. Ephraimite, I think, who had the Levite.
Yes, he brought his own. Yeah, okay. That's a great story. That's a great example.
But I guess the thing that's kind of missing from that story, sort of, compared to the story about Aaron and the calf when Moses is up on the mountain, is that, there is a good possibility this guy's never seen the things that, the people that originally came out of Egypt saw. Like how much God had moved, how much the miracles they saw right in front of them. I'm talking about night and day.
But they have
stuff.
something else in common as well.
So okay, you can go there. But my question is, what do you think is what are the similarities between what the people of Israel were thinking, knowing that there's a God in heaven and having seen him work, and then being willing to worship this calf?
Yeah.
And Aaron, being the priest of God, being willing to build it for him.
Yeah.
That what is it in the mind of the individual that goes there and is willing to, kind of dismiss everything that's happened in the past?
It's the same thing with the story of the Ephraimite. Is when you stop and zoom back and you look at the whole scene, where is the God? Where is it? You have the golden calf, which is the image of the God. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have, in the story of the Ephraimite, you have the carving, which is the image of God. But where is the God? The actual God? There isn't one.
Right.
There isn't one, because it's not necessary to fill that gap, because we don't want a God. That's the whole point.
Yeah, we don't
want a God.
Why?
What we want is a theology that puts us in charge. That's what we want, is we want a theology that puts us in charge. And so that's why, because when you look at various religions and you look at the inner workings of the religions themselves, there are so many mandates. I mean, mandates like in Islam of praying 5 times a day. Why pray 5 times a day? Because it's a mandate. You have to. But nobody knows why. There is no why. We do it 5 times a day because of this reason. It's because the God said. Mm-hmm. Well, again, where is the God? So if you pray 5 times a day, what happens? What happens to the Muslim who doesn't pray 5 times a day but still believes in Allah, and the Muslim that is very devout and prays 5 times a day? What is the benefit to this one as opposed to this one? Nothing. There's no benefit. You could say, you're more holy, you're going to get a greater reward in eternity. But what about right now? Is there anything happening? Is there any evidence that this God is actually there? and this is the interesting thing from over the years of talking to religious people, is that for the most part, religious people are okay with a godless religion. Not ungodly, but a godless religion where you just have to do the best that you can do. You just do the best that you can do and everything will work out from there. And if you're devout enough, you're dedicated enough, maybe you're not very holy and maybe you haven't got your act together too well, but as long as you're devout, as long as you really believe this, which I think is the reason why you find in many religions, it's funny because it came up the other day of, why is it that, when you witness to certain people, get in a conversation, for example, with a Mormon, or you get in a conversation with a Jehovah's Witness, they may disagree or they may have some problems with what you're saying. But for the most part, anybody that's really into Judaism, they get angry, and they're ready to fight, because of what you're saying. But yet and in Islam, that's the West, is the great Satan. And where did that come from? What came from the fact that it's not just our lifestyles and things like that. That is part of it, but it's more about the fact that because there's no belief in Allah, and so you have to fight. You have to fight for Allah. You have to fight for your religion, because your religion, the leader of your religion, the God of your religion, can't fight for himself. And this is why, which is interesting, is that when you look through history, true persecution in the true sense of the term, going after somebody simply because they are a Muslim, okay? I mean a Christian, it's easy target. Now, I do understand that Hitler and persecution of Jews and things like that. I do understand that there is an anti-Semitism. And I believe that anti-Semitism really comes from the same God, the God that Christians follow, and that's the issue, is that there's a testimony of the true and the living God when it comes to Jews, because he is the God of Israel. Mm-hmm. Even though they're not honoring him in that way, he is still the God of Israel.
Sorry, what you said comes from, you're talking about Hitler and persecution of the Jews. What you said, it comes from the same God.
It comes from attacking the same God's people.
Oh, gotcha.
It's attacking God's people.
Okay, yeah.
Christians were also put in prison during that time. There's not a lot of talk about that, but Christians were being rounded up as well when it came to true Christians, not your religious Christians that were handing over Jewish people.
Yeah.
But actual Christians who were going, this isn't right. This isn't right. What's happening here, and felt compelled to make a stand. You have like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, others, that made a stand during that time and said, no, you're not going to just kind of walk all over these people. We're gonna. This isn't right. And so that wasn't just a personal conviction. That was no. These people are God's people. And this shouldn't be happening. And we see that persecution in the Old Testament as well. We see that kind of persecution as they're taken away into Babylon and various things. And so what's I think very, very important to understand is that, again, like I keep coming back to this idea, is that religions borrow from Jehovah, and implemented. But yet when you look at these religions and you try to identify the God, where is the God of that religion? He's not there. He doesn't exist. And so you have, for example, you have the supposed miracles that have been done by Muhammad. Well, but nobody's doing those kinds of miracles now. Why did it stop with Muhammad? And then it makes you wonder, okay, well, were they really miracles, or were they just, zealous followers and saying things were happening that hadn't actually happened? I'm not trying to discount that without evidence. I'm just being, why not today? So why? In fact, I know from personal experience that there is at least a portion of Muslims that don't believe in divine healing. Mm-hmm. They believe that that's demonic, that the devil heals, but God doesn't. And how convenient that is, because you're talking about a supernatural event that only Christians can do.
Yeah.
Non-Christians can't do that. You have these people that are, faith healers and, different religions and stuff like that. But when you go and look and see, what's actually happening in the midst of that is they're actually trading, they're trading one thing for another. Usually there's a price involved in their healing. They don't just get healed and it's a glorious thing. I've been healed. I went to this, faith healer or whatever that doesn't believe in God or doesn't believes in, Buddhism or something like that. It's like, no, there's, the chakra and, and all that kind of stuff. If you look into that, you'll see that there's a lot of what I'll call natural healing. That it really isn't supernatural, miraculous healing, which only happens in Christianity. You only have supernatural, miraculous healings in Christianity. Documented supernatural, miraculous healings. Why? Because that's not evidence of the power of a Christian. That's the evidence of the reality of the God of Christianity. And so that's always the question which I really didn't, thinking, how in the world am I going to get into this comparison thing? Because that's the big question, is that God seems to be absent. It's like here's a good example of it in the time of Elijah, when Elijah is gone to the prophets of Baal, which is a false deity, and he says, listen, if Baal is God, worship him. If Jehovah is God, worship him. Don't stand in the middle. Make your decision. What are you going to do? Because these were Israelites. These weren't just foreigners. These were Israelites. And so what happens is that they're cutting themselves. He lets them go first. They give a sacrifice. They're cutting themselves. They're all day long. And he's mocking the whole thing. Where's your God? Maybe you need to be a little louder. He must be asleep. Or maybe he's tending to his needs. And so, he's just mocking them in nothing. And then he says, pour water, over the sacrifice. He rebuilds the altar, puts everything in order, has him pour water on it, pour some more water on it, pour some more water on it, pour some more. He's making it so there's no way this thing can catch fire in any way, shape, or form. And then he prays, and down comes the fire from heaven, licks up everything, and it's gone. It's finished. And the sacrifice is gone, and they're yelling, the Lord, he is God. Well, you say, oh yeah, well, when's the last time somebody had an altar like that here? Well, go to Africa and go to a healing crusade, and watch. I've video footage of thousands of people, and it almost looks like the hand of God as you see this wave of people start to fall backwards under the power of God, and people are getting gloriously healed, blind eyes opening, deaf ears opening, documented stuff. I think it's time to come out from the 50 years ago and saying, oh, well, how do we know any of that's true? Listen, the world's a much smaller place now with the internet. You've got people there with cell phones, and they can record this stuff now. I mean, it's just like, there's no more of this idea of, oh, maybe they just said this stuff happened. No, we can see it happening.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so that's the trouble that I have with all this, because it's like, when you start looking at attributes of what Jehovah God does versus these other gods, well, that's the problem is that they don't have those attributes.
Yeah.
Those attributes don't exist. You want them to have that attribute, and you wish that was true, and you may try your best to empower your fake God to have these kinds of attributes. But the truth of the matter is that God doesn't exist, and when push comes to shove, you haven't got anything to rely on.
Yeah.
And this is true of all religion. And this is the thing is when you are pushed to the wall, and it's life and death, you're going to have a very, very hard time putting your faith in any other God. That's all there is to it. You're going to die like ordinary men for the most part. That's going to be the thing. There may be those who just really, to the death, they just, they're atheists to the death. There is no God, and I'm going to tell them so when I get there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it comes right down to it, is that they're in the heart of man, there's no hope. outside of Jehovah God. There just is no hope. And Jesus is the how would I describe it? He's the physical proof of the God of the Bible. He's the physical proof. Well, it's been rewritten. It's been, it's funny. People will say to me, the Bible's been rewritten, and then I go to try to explain to them what happened. They go, no, 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 and it's like, you haven't looked this up, have you? You haven't researched this, right? You've been told this. Somebody told you this. Maybe you were in a class in school, and somebody said that. But you haven't looked into this, right? You haven't actually looked in how the Bible was written. No, 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 no. Don't change. Listen, hey, my mind is already made up. Don't try to convince me. Otherwise, I don't have time to listen to what you have to say. I already know that I don't believe in God. And that's all there is to it. It's like, okay, well, fine. That's your choice. You make that choice, or I believe this is God, or I believe that's God. That's fine, but you're doing it without evidence, without power, without any proof whatsoever. And Christianity is not like that. Christianity is not a powerless religion. It is a religion of power. And the funny thing is that over the years, as I've been, I've run into, religious people come into the church all the time. And when religious people come in and they want to, oh, well, God's like this and God's like that, and you can do this and you can do that and you can do the other thing. They're powerless. They usually don't, they don't either believe in speaking in tongues, or they don't speak in tongues. They don't believe in healing, or they believe that it's a certain gifting and not everybody can do it. But it's always, it's powerless people. Religious people are powerless. The only power they have is weapons, physical weapons. That's the only thing they have. They have no spiritual power whatsoever. And it's true even of, you can go into Africa, witch doctors. We've sent churches all over Africa, and usually what ends up happening is the witch doctors end up getting saved. Because they realize, man, my power is nothing compared to this. They can curse people and people get scared and people can die and all those kinds of things. But if they become a Christian, it's like, you know what? Greater is he that is in me. You don't have any power over me. It's a whole nother story.
So, yes, this was great, and actually was totally the direction I was hoping to go, but I just worded my question horribly in the beginning.
Okay,
so I'll take all the blame for that. That was on me. But it is 7:56.
Okay.
So I'm gonna rattle through these, and we're gonna go a bit long. If you have off-topic questions, you can go ahead and throw them in, and we will prioritize the questions as they come in. But so when I make these statements, just like I said, from what people believe about false gods, all false gods, how do these compare? This is what is said about the God of the Bible is the only one who. And so the first one is, who can create life? The only one who can create life.
Yes.
Who died and rose again.
See, now again, that's it. See, that's the problem, is that the answer is yes, but there are beliefs, that their God died and rose again.
Yeah.
There are beliefs of that, and so, if we're only talking about beliefs, then everything's equal.
Yeah.
That was my point. You can't say that.
Yeah.
Others. So the one about creating life, there's stories of Zeus creating life.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is that you can say these things.
Yeah.
The answer is going to be, well, but they're not real.
Yeah.
So it's like we're back to the same boat.
Okay. So because I do have a final question, and honestly, what I'm looking for is, are there things about the existent God, the God of the Bible, God who is real, that is unique to him that no other God has claim to?
Well, again, the reason why the answer to that is no.
No. So in all areas, God claims that somewhere.
Because it's part of the deal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the deal. You've got to somehow borrow from the Jehovah God into your God to legitimize it. Otherwise, it's not legit. And so you have to, like I said, the idea of dying and paying the price for sins and things like that.
Worthy of worship, can forgive sins, is the Savior of our lives, who has authority to decide where souls spend eternity,
Yeah. Yeah.
who provides while false idols or gods only want to be worshipped.
Yeah, see, this is what I mean. If you notice the context of some of these things and how they're being said, is that it's as if, and I don't believe that the people answering this are answering it from the standpoint of thinking these entities actually exist.
Right.
But that's the idea,
Yeah.
Is that, but that's not what these entities, the creators of these entities, that's not what they claim. And so that's the problem is that you're talking about, oh, they can't do this and they can't do that and they can't do the other thing. No, the claim is that they can, not only can, but have done those things. And so that's the issue, is that the claim is made that these things can be done. That's why I said, when you try to get into, and I highly recommend anybody who's, witnessing to people, don't get caught up in that idea of comparing, their God to your God. Even if they say, well, I believe the God Jehovah is like this, or I believe he's like that. No, but we believe, you believe, we believe. When you start going there, you're both right.
Yeah.
You're both right, and you're equally valid. Your opinion is equally valid.
Okay.
So it's only out of arrogance that you believe that your opinion is more valid than somebody else's opinion. So we have to go beyond all that, and we have to go to the place where we're not talking about opinion. We're talking about facts. We're talking about reality. What does the Bible say? Not what we believe about what the Bible says, but what does the Bible say? And this is something that without that, you're just you may be able to get people to come to church. You may even get people to join the religion of Christianity. But if you're going to get somebody saved, well, you're going to have to be saved first. You're going to have to.
So, but can't you do like can't you technically make the same argument against the Bible? Like, so again, thinking somebody that believes my God, my book, right? Don't they kind of say the same thing? So what I'm after is, where is the disparity, the evidence?
Well, I didn't say the book.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't say the book.
What does the Bible say? What do you mean by that then?
Okay, so the issue is that, when somebody says, I believe this, or I believe that, or I believe the other thing, okay, you have to go back to the Bible, show them in the Bible what the Bible says. When you're dealing with people that are Christian, or claiming to be Christians, or claiming to be a follower of Jehovah God, well, then they have to accept the Bible. Okay, you can't claim to be a follower of Jehovah God and not accept the Bible, because how do you know anything about Jehovah God? You don't know anything. You don't have a clue. There's no way to know otherwise. But otherwise it's just somebody else's opinion is no better than anybody else's opinion, and so you have to have that foundation. But when you're talking with Mormons or Muslims or different, you have to come back to the fact that, hey, their leader had a respect or a reverence for parts of the Bible, and so you have to work with that. To tell them, listen, you can't just pick and choose. If your leader has a reverence for what the Scripture teaches, you can't just turn around and go, but this part is like this, and that part is like that, and the other part is like that. No, you have to. I was, which I didn't even know, but I went to the Bible, the book, Bible Museum in New York. And was talking to a scribe. He was actual literal scribe from Israel, had come over. A lot of people were telling him, don't come over, which I think is funny, is they were telling him, because he came from Israel to take this job. And all of his friends and family and various friends, rabbis and things, were saying, don't take this job, because if you do, you'll convert. You're going to become a Christian. And so they didn't want him to come. And he's like, no, I'm very confident in what I believe. And so he comes over and he's answering questions about the Bible, which I thought was amazing. But when I'm talking to him, I'm like, so you say this is what Jewish people believe? So you do understand this is not what the words say, right? He said, well, that's the thing. He says, when it comes down to the writing, we believe that this is just kind of pictorial, and, it just means other things. And it's just, it was written, it wasn't actually written to be a book. It's like it was a philosophy, like it was just, the God philosophy, book. And none of it has to be true. Things like, when Adam and Eve were God created them, he created them back to back. And the idea of Adam and Eve were actually back to back. They were a creature, one single creature back to back, and then God just separated them. And it's like, there's just nothing in the Bible that says that you just made that up out of thin air. How can you
Never heard that before.
how can you have such a belief? Talking, another thing you mentioned, something too with Joseph's coat of many colors, and it means something entirely different. It had nothing to do, it wasn't a coat, had nothing to do with colors. It was a whole, and I'm like, but you just make this stuff up. I mean, it's like, and it's always, well, the rabbis, and it's like, well, that's the thing. It's the rabbis, it's the gurus, it's the imams, well, the holy people, it's always those, in religious Christianity, it's the priests, everybody's got this revelation. So it's, but like I said, you at some point, and that was my whole point of that, is at some point you have to start on a foundation. And so what does the Bible say? What is the history? Is that wrong? Do you have proof? Do you have evidence that this didn't happen? Are you just saying, well, we don't know if that really happened or not? Well, that's a hard place to argue from, because if you've never been to Australia, you can say, well, personally, I've never been to Australia, so I don't really know if there really is an Australia. No. Let me tell you about these different places. There's Sydney, no. Listen, I don't know that they exist. It's like, how can you have an intelligent discussion at that kind of level? And this is what people do when it comes to the scriptures. If you believe that the Bible is not true, do you have evidence that proves that the Bible's not true? Not, do you believe that the Bible's true? And if you don't, well, then that's just as valid as people who believe it's true. That's not how you have a logical conversation.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean.
So a couple conclusions then, and from your answers, is that one is, other gods are man-made, and it seems like that's kind of a lot of what is leaned on. Muhammad said this, the priests say this,
yes,
the rabbis
yes,
say that.
Yeah.
But with the God of the Bible, the difference is?
The difference is that they're not, this is, so you have to understand that again, the idea of beginning and
right.
coming up, you already have a pre-existing story.
Right.
That's already accepted. It's got credibility. Why does it have credibility? Why does it have solid credibility? And why is it that we have to come to this place like thousands of years later where we go, we've discovered that these things aren't true? So for the last, what is it, everybody, all bunch of, is it's funny because it's like religious atheism. It's like we were just all monkeys back then, and we were just stupid, didn't know anything. It's like, yeah, how can you tolerate that kind of thought in your brain? That there was a time where humans were just useless grunts, just making weird noises, but yet they are the brainchild of what we are, or we are their brainchild. Yeah. It's come on, okay, so at what point did these monkey-like people start creating amazing things? It's like, at what point? It's like, come on, let's be realistic. If it was really true that that's how things started, even if you had a couple of the accidents that atheism tries to claim, we still would be dumb. To this very day,
yes.
We'd be dumb, brainless, wandering around, and we certainly wouldn't be thinking about God. We wouldn't be thinking about some higher being. We would be going around saying, I feel hungry. Well, that tastes good, but maybe it needs to be cooked, and somebody goes, ow, and well, I don't know if I should respond to that ow or not. It's like, I'm hungry, that's his meat, and so, it's like,
It took me a second to get that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, is that it's just this brainless way of thinking, it's just really, but it all fits together. We just want a God to be what we want a God to be. And the problem is, the best we can come up with is a powerless God. That's the best we can come up with. All religions' gods are powerless except the God of Christianity. That's the only one. the only one that has power, the only one that's able to do miracles. Miracles in Christianity, it's a part of it. It's a part of it. It's not, there's no such thing as Christianity without miracles. Christianity and miracles go together. And I'm not just talking about saints and miraculous events that get people put in Saint so-and-so type of, the Hall of Fame of Christians. I'm talking about ordinary, normal people that ask Jesus, like in my own life, ask Jesus to come into their heart, forgive their sins, and then the next day they're not the same person anymore. Show me that in any other religion. Show me somebody who decided they're going to become a Hindu. And so they become a Hindu, and then all of a sudden they wake up the next day and they say, you know what? I am so much closer to being a complete human being than I was yesterday. I mean, like light years. I'm almost there. It's like a lot of the crap that I've been dragging around for years just fell off of me last night when I prayed and asked Jesus to come into my life. And I've heard people say, well, I could pray and ask Buddha to come into my life and the same thing will happen. Try it. Try it. I bet you it doesn't. I bet you it won't. And I've never heard a testimony from a Buddhist who says, you know what? I asked Buddha to come into my heart and he changed my life. And that's it, and they don't even believe Buddha's even alive anymore. He's part of the whole nirvana, meaningless, conscious thing that Hindus are or Buddhists are focusing on. I'm mixing Hindus and Buddhists. But
Yeah.
You get the idea. So that's why a lot of these, the attributes and this kind of thing just doesn't. It's not a sell, because if I was a non-Jehovah believing individual with the same capacity that I have right now, I would shred most Christians. They wouldn't have a leg to stand on if I told them why I don't believe in Jehovah God, and they told me why they believe in Jehovah God. And I said, I believe one thing, you believe another thing. Prove it.
Uh-huh.
Prove me wrong. Show me I'm wrong. Show me it. Show me I'm wrong. I want you to show me I'm wrong. This is what I believe. This is how I think things. Show me. Where are they going to go? I saw a guy one day. It's like, that's not going to show anything. That doesn't prove anything. There has to be history. And the history is that the Bible is true. It's a genuine history. We've already gotten past all that. The whole idea of the Bible being a reliable history has already been resolved. That issue's been resolved since back in the 50s. It's the archaeological digs, and there's been even other ones afterwards that have authenticated everything in the Bible. There's nothing outstanding. Oh, this never happened. This never happened. The Bible says this happened, and it never happened. There's no such thing.
Very cool.
Did you already go through everything that's been written? Yeah?
No.
No? Oh.
No, but you kind of answered all of them.
Oh,
I
okay.
read the rest
Okay.
of them. Yeah.
All right.
There was actually only a couple left. It was the God of the Bible is in all of us. That was actually it. It was just that last
okay.
one. So there was a couple of comments in between those.
Okay.
So very cool. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. We will be here again.
No questions.
No questions. No off-topic questions. But thanks for joining. And we will be here again next week. We will also be here for our midweek service tomorrow night. And we really do encourage you, if you're in the local area, in the San Mateo County area or in the Bay Area on the peninsula, come join us for a service. We're going to put the information up on the screen here in a minute. Come, you can meet us. You can ask questions and experience the evidence for yourself, really. And so we hope you join us, and we'll see everybody again next week.